The deep space sensors screamed their warnings across the bridge of the UES Phoenix as Commander Jake Morrison watched the impossible sight unfold on his main screen. Thousands of ships materialized from hyperspace at the edge of human territory, their hulls gleaming with alien designs that spoke of technologies humanity had only dreamed about. The fleet stretched across space like a metal constellation, each vessel larger than Earth's biggest dreadnoughts. Jake's hands gripped the armrests of his command chair as his communications officer turned toward him with wide eyes. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies. It's coming from the lead ship." The main screen flickered and displayed a creature that made Jake's blood run cold. The alien stood nearly 8 feet tall with scaled green skin that reflected the harsh lighting of its ship's bridge. Its yellow eyes held no warmth, only cold calculation as it began to speak in perfect English. "I am Star of the Korathi Empire, speaking for the Galactic Alliance. Your species has been observed expanding beyond your home system without permission. You have colonized worlds and built weapons without consulting the established order of this galaxy. This ends now?" Jake felt sweat form on his forehead as Star continued. "The Alliance consists of 7 civilized species who have maintained peace for over 3,000 years. Your kind threatens this balance with your aggressive nature and unpredictable behavior. We have come to offer terms that will prevent unnecessary destruction." At Luna Command, Admiral Lisa Carter watched the same transmission from her war room deep beneath the moon's surface. Her staff of officers stood frozen around holographic displays that showed the true scope of the alien fleet. Over 3,000 ships of various designs floated in formation, representing technologies from multiple species working together. "Admiral," her intelligence officer spoke quietly, "we're detecting at least 7 different ship designs. The largest vessels are 5 kilometers long and armed with weapons we can't identify. Our best estimates suggest their fleet could level every human colony in less than a week." Lisa nodded grimly as Star's voice filled the room. "The terms are simple. All human military forces will stand down immediately. Your weapons will be surrendered to Alliance custody. Your populations will be relocated to designated worlds where they can be properly supervised and educated in civilized behavior. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force." Captain Ben Hughes received the transmission at his frontier outpost near Alpha Centauri, where his small fleet of patrol ships suddenly seemed laughably inadequate against the alien armada. His tactical display showed enemy scout ships already moving through human space, mapping their defenses with casual efficiency. "Captain," his second-in-command whispered, "they're treating us like children who need to be disciplined." Ben watched as more details came through intelligence channels. The Alliance had been observing humanity for decades, cataloging their expansion and military development. What humans saw as natural growth and exploration, the aliens viewed as dangerous aggression that needed to be controlled. Star's image dominated every screen across human space as he delivered the final terms. "You have 72 hours to transmit your acceptance of these conditions. Your leaders will present themselves to Alliance custody for processing. Your military commanders will order all forces to power down their weapons and await further instructions. Any attempt to resist or flee will result in the immediate destruction of your homeworld." The transmission ended, leaving an ominous silence that seemed to echo through every human ship and station. In conference rooms and military headquarters across 12 star systems, emergency meetings began as humanity's leaders grappled with an impossible choice. President Helen Ross sat in the secure briefing room beneath Washington, D.C., surrounded by military advisors and civilian officials who looked as stunned as she felt. The holographic display showed the alien fleet in all its terrifying detail, each ship bristling with weapons that could reduce Earth cities to ash. "Madam President," her defense secretary began carefully, "our analysis suggests they have the firepower to back up their threats. Our entire fleet combined wouldn't last an hour against even a fraction of their forces." General Patrick Stone, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, leaned forward with grim determination. We've run every scenario through our computers. A conventional military response would be suicide, but surrender means the end of human independence forever. Lisa Carter's voice crackled through the secure communications link from Luna Command. The Alliance has done this before. Our intelligence files show at least 12 other species that were integrated into their empire over the past millennium. None of them maintained any real autonomy afterward. President Ross studied the faces around her, seeing fear mixed with stubborn human pride. What are our options, Admiral? Limited, Madam President. We can attempt to negotiate for better terms, though I doubt they'll be receptive. We can try to evacuate our outer colonies and consolidate our defenses around Earth, or we can refuse their demands entirely. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the weight of that decision. Across human space, similar conversations were taking place as military commanders and colonial governors wrestled with the same terrible choice. Captain Hughes found himself staring at the tactical display that showed Alliance scouts methodically cataloging human defensive positions. Their movements were precise and confident, the actions of a force that had done this many times before. The aliens weren't just threatening humanity. They were processing them like a bureaucratic procedure. Back on the Phoenix, Jake Morrison gathered his senior staff in the briefing room where tension hung thick in the recycled air. His weapons officer spoke what everyone was thinking. Sir, they're not treating this like a war. They're treating it like pest control. Jake nodded slowly as he considered their position. The Phoenix was one of humanity's newest and most advanced ships, but compared to the alien vessels it looked like a child's toy. Yet something about the alien's casual arrogance sparked anger in his chest. Hours passed as the deadline approached, and still no official response came from Earth's government. Behind closed doors, President Ross and her advisors debated through the night, weighing impossible choices against unacceptable consequences. The Alliance fleet waited with patient confidence, their ships maintaining perfect formation as they expected humanity's inevitable surrender. Vexstar and his fellow commanders had seen this pattern before with other species. Fear would overcome pride, and another race would be peacefully integrated into the Alliance's growing empire. But as the 72-hour deadline approached, something unexpected began to happen. No transmission came from Earth, no message of surrender or negotiation reached the Alliance fleet. The silence stretched on, growing more ominous with each passing hour. In that silence, humanity had given its answer. The countdown clock on Admiral Lisa Carter's command screen showed 18 hours remaining until the Alliance deadline, but across human space a different kind of preparation was already underway. In laboratories hidden deep within asteroid mining facilities, Dr. Sam Collins pushed his research team harder than ever before as they raced to complete projects that had been theoretical just days ago. Sam wiped sweat from his forehead as he watched the quantum torpedo prototype take shape in the fabrication chamber. The weapon used principles that human scientists had only recently discovered, based on fragments of alien technology recovered from previous encounters with Alliance scout ships. The torpedo could theoretically penetrate any known energy shield by shifting its quantum frequency in real time. "Doctor, the power coupling is unstable," his assistant called out from across the laboratory. "The quantum matrix keeps fluctuating beyond safe parameters." Sam rushed to the control console and began adjusting the delicate calibrations. "Keep it steady, Rachel. We need at least 6 functional units ready for field testing. The conventional weapons won't even scratch their hull plating." 3 levels below the main lab, another team worked frantically on adaptive shield technology. The shields could analyze incoming energy patterns and adjust their defensive frequencies automatically, something that might give human ships a fighting chance against superior alien firepower. Every piece of equipment had been stripped from civilian projects and repurposed for military applications. Colonel Maya Thompson stood in the evacuation command center on Mars, coordinating the largest civilian relocation in human history while simultaneously positioning military assets for maximum effect. Her screen showed thousands of transport ships, moving non-essential personnel away from frontier worlds, while cargo vessels secretly delivered weapons and supplies to hidden military bases. Colonel, the Titan shipyards report they can have 12 more destroyers ready within 8 hours, her logistics officer reported. The crews are working around the clock, but the ships won't have full shakedown testing. Maya nodded grimly as she studied the evacuation progress. Better to have untested ships than no ships at all. What's the status on the civilian populations? 80% of non-essential personnel have been moved to inter-system shelters. We're telling them it's a precautionary measure due to diplomatic tensions. Most people believe we're handling this through negotiations. The deception was necessary to prevent panic, but Maya knew the truth would come out soon enough. When the shooting started, every human in the galaxy would understand exactly what they were facing. Captain Nick Davis guided his stealth frigate through the outer edges of the Alliance fleet, using every trick he had learned in 15 years of reconnaissance missions. His ship's experimental cloaking system bent light and sensor waves around the hull, making them nearly invisible to conventional detection methods. Captain, I'm picking up massive energy signatures from their flagship, his sensor operator whispered. The power output is off our scale. Whatever weapons they're carrying could probably crack a moon. Nick studied the tactical data streaming across his screens as they drifted silently between the alien vessels. The Alliance fleet was even larger than initial estimates suggested, with ships ranging from kilometer-long cruisers to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. But more importantly, he was gathering crucial intelligence about their formation patterns and communication protocols. There, he pointed to a cluster of smaller ships near the fleet center. Those are command and control vessels. Notice how the other ships adjust their positions whenever those ships move. Target their communications network and the whole fleet becomes uncoordinated. His crew methodically cataloged every detail they could observe, building a database of alien ship designs and tactical doctrines that might prove vital in the coming battle. The stealth mission was dangerous beyond measure, but the intelligence they gathered could mean the difference between defeat and survival. Meanwhile, aboard Vexstar-S flagship, the Alliance commander grew increasingly puzzled by humanity's continued silence. His communications officer had been monitoring all human frequencies, expecting surrender terms or desperate pleas for mercy, but found only routine civilian traffic and military communications that seemed strangely calm. Commander Vexstar, his tactical advisor approached with obvious concern. Our scout reports indicate unusual movement patterns in the human fleet. They appear to be repositioning their forces, but not in any defensive configuration we recognize. Vexstar-S scaled features twisted into what might have been a frown. Explain, their ships are dispersing throughout their territory rather than concentrating around their homeworld. This makes no tactical sense if they intend to surrender. It also makes no sense if they intend to mount a conventional defense. The Korathi commander studied the tactical displays with growing unease. In 3 millennia of Alliance expansion, conquered species had always followed predictable patterns when faced with overwhelming force. They either surrendered immediately or gathered their fleets for a final desperate stand around their most important worlds. Humanity was doing neither. Back on Earth, President Helen Ross emerged from another marathon strategy session with her military advisors. The debates had raged for hours, with some officials arguing for surrender and others demanding resistance, despite the odds. But slowly, a consensus had formed around a third option that no one dared speak aloud. Admiral Carter, the president spoke into her secure communicator. What's the status of Operation Silent Thunder? Lisa's voice came back steady despite the magnitude of what they were discussing. All assets are moving into position, madam. President, Dr. Collins reports his new weapons will be ready for deployment within 6 hours. Colonel Thompson has completed the civilian evacuations without compromising operational security. And Captain Davis? His reconnaissance mission has provided invaluable intelligence on Alliance fleet composition and weaknesses. We know where to hit them. President Ross closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of humanity's future resting on her shoulders. "Admiral, when this begins, there will be no going back." "Are you certain our people are ready?" "Madam President, our people have been ready since the moment the Alliance demanded our surrender. They just don't know it yet." Across human space, the final preparations continued in secret. Fighter pilots ran last-minute drills on tactics designed to exploit the size difference between human and alien ships. Engineers installed the new quantum weapons on every available vessel. Marines practiced boarding procedures for alien ship designs they had never seen before. Captain Ben Hughes watched Alliance scout ships continue their methodical mapping of human defenses, apparently confident that their surveillance would go unchallenged. The aliens seemed to view this as a routine operation, just another species to be processed and integrated into their empire. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving coded transmissions from Admiral Carter. Operation Silent Thunder is confirmed for execution in 4 hours." Ben felt his pulse quicken as he realized what that meant. In 4 hours, humanity would give the Alliance their final answer, and it would not be delivered through words or diplomatic channels. The countdown clock continued its relentless march toward zero, but humanity was no longer counting down to surrender. They were counting down to war. The 72-hour deadline passed without a single transmission from Earth, and Vextar's patience finally snapped. Standing on his flagship's bridge, the Karathi commander issued orders that had been used to subjugate dozens of species across the galaxy. Alliance battle groups moved toward what their intelligence identified as critical human military installations, confident that swift destruction of key targets would force immediate surrender. The first target was the Proxima Research Station, a massive orbital facility that Alliance sensors showed as heavily defended and clearly important to human military operations. 3 Alliance cruisers approached the station with weapons charged, broadcasting warnings for any remaining personnel to evacuate immediately. Admiral Lisa Carter watched the Alliance ships close in on their target from her command center beneath Luna's surface, a grim smile playing across her lips. The Proxima Research Station was indeed heavily defended and clearly important, but not in the way the aliens believed. Every sensor reading they had gathered was carefully crafted deception, designed to draw attention away from humanity's real assets. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "Alliance vessels are in position around the decoy facility. All human personnel evacuated 12 hours ago as planned." "Excellent. Let them have their victory," Lisa replied as she watched the Alliance ships unleash their weapons against the empty station. The structure collapsed in spectacular fashion, its destruction visible across 3 star systems as twisted metal and burning atmosphere created a debris field that would be seen for weeks. But while the aliens celebrated their easy victory, Captain Ben Hughes was already moving his real strike force into position near Alpha Centauri. His ships had been hidden in the asteroid belt for days, powered down and invisible to Alliance sensors that were focused on the obvious targets humanity had deliberately revealed. "All ships report ready, Captain," his communications officer whispered. "Dr. Collins' quantum torpedoes are loaded and targeting systems are locked onto the Alliance patrol group." Ben studied his tactical display, which showed 6 Alliance vessels conducting what they believed was a routine sweep of the area. The alien ships moved in perfect formation, following textbook protocols that assumed no significant resistance from primitive human forces. "Fire!" Ben commanded quietly. The quantum torpedoes launched silently through space, their exotic warheads invisible to conventional sensors until the moment of impact. The first Alliance cruiser simply vanished in a flash of exotic energy as the torpedo destabilized its hull at the molecular level. The second ship had time to raise shields before the next torpedo struck, but the quantum frequency shifters cut through the energy barrier like it wasn't there. The remaining Alliance ships tried to scatter, but human destroyers emerged from behind asteroids and moons where they had been waiting in ambush. Captain Amy Foster led the charge in her ship, the experimental adaptive shields shimmering around her hull as Alliance weapons fire struck harmlessly against the quantum-responsive barrier. "Their shields are useless," Amy reported over the battle communication network. The adaptive matrix is analyzing their weapon frequencies and adjusting our defenses in real time. We're taking hits but suffering no damage. The brief engagement ended with 6 Alliance ships destroyed and no human casualties. As the alien debris drifted through space, Ben's fleet vanished back into the asteroid field before Alliance reinforcements could arrive. Commander Jake Morrison received word of the successful ambush while his own ships prepared for operation. Hornet's Nest. Admiral Carter's plan to use humanity's superior knowledge of local space against the massive but unwieldy Alliance fleet. Human ships emerged from hiding places throughout the solar system, striking at enemy formations before disappearing again into carefully prepared concealment. Jake's squadron attacked an Alliance supply convoy near Jupiter's moons, using the gas giant's radiation field to mask their approach. The alien ships were heavily armed but designed for deep space operations, not the tricky navigation required near massive planetary bodies. "Take us through the radiation belt," Jake ordered. His helmsman, "Our ships are smaller and more maneuverable. They won't be able to follow us into the interference zone." The human ships dove into Jupiter's electromagnetic field, using specialized shielding to protect their crews while the pursuing Alliance vessels found their sensors blinded and their communications disrupted. When the aliens tried to follow, 2 of their ships collided with debris rings they couldn't detect. While the others were forced to retreat, Jake's torpedo salvo caught the supply ships completely exposed, destroying 3 massive cargo vessels that had been bringing supplies to the Alliance fleet. The explosions lit up space like tiny suns, and the shock waves could be felt on monitoring stations throughout the outer system. But the most shocking development came when Alliance forces attempted their first planetary landing on the human colony world of New Texas. Colonel Maya Thompson had spent weeks preparing for this moment. Turning every human settlement into a carefully disguised death trap, the Alliance landing craft descended toward what appeared to be a lightly defended agricultural world, expecting to encounter frightened colonists who would surrender without resistance. Instead, they found themselves flying into a nightmare of quantum mines and adaptive camouflage systems that made human soldiers nearly invisible until they opened fire. Maya watched from her command bunker as Alliance troops stumbled through what they thought were empty fields, not realizing they were walking through carefully prepared kill zones. When the trap was sprung, portable quantum weapons tore through alien armor like paper, while human soldiers seemed to materialize from the landscape itself. "Colonel, the enemy landing force is in full retreat," her ground operations commander reported. "They're abandoning their equipment and calling for immediate evacuation. Our casualties are minimal." The failed landing attempt sent shock waves through the Alliance command structure. For the first time in centuries, their ground forces had been defeated by what they considered a primitive species using inferior technology aboard his flagship. Vestar stared at the battle reports with growing disbelief. The humans were not fighting like any species the Alliance had encountered before. Instead of massing their forces for a desperate last stand, they were striking everywhere at once with weapons that shouldn't exist and tactics that defied conventional military doctrine. "Commander," his tactical advisor approached hesitantly, "we have lost contact with 12 patrol groups in the past 6 hours. Our supply lines are under constant attack, and the attempted planetary assault was a complete disaster." Vestar's scaled fists clenched as he realized the magnitude of his miscalculation. The Alliance had expected to face a conventional military force that would either surrender quickly or die gloriously in a futile gesture of defiance. Instead, they were fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules, using technology that seemed to specifically counter Alliance advantages. "Recall all patrol groups to the main fleet," he ordered. "If the humans want a war, we will give them one they cannot win through tricks and deception." But even as Vestar prepared for a decisive engagement, human forces were already adapting their tactics again. Admiral Carter's strategy was working perfectly, turning the Alliance's size and confidence against them while humanity's new weapons and shields proved their worth in combat. The war had truly begun, and humanity had drawn first blood. Admiral Lisa Carter stood before the holographic display in her war room, watching the carefully orchestrated chaos of Operation Hornet's Nest unfold across human space. The strategy was working beyond her wildest expectations as small human. Strike forces continued to tear through alliance formations like wolves hunting among sheep. Captain Nick Davis led his squadron of fast attack ships through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, hunting for alliance supply convoys that were desperately trying to keep their massive fleet operational. His ships moved through the rocky maze with practiced ease while the larger alien vessels struggled to navigate the dangerous debris field. "Contact ahead," his sensor operator called out. "Alliance supply train, 8 ships with escort fighters. They're trying to use the asteroids for cover." Nick smiled grimly as he maneuvered his ship behind a kilometer-wide rock. The Alliance escorts were powerful enough to destroy any human ship in a straight fight, but they were designed for open space combat and moved like lumbering giants among the asteroids. "All ships, execute Plan Delta. Use the rocks as shields, and hit them with everything we have." The human ships darted between asteroids like deadly fish through a coral reef, launching quantum torpedoes from unexpected angles before vanishing behind cover again. The Alliance escorts tried to pursue, but found themselves smashing into debris when they attempted to follow the nimble human craft through the narrow spaces. When the engagement ended, another vital supply convoy had been destroyed while the human ships escaped without a single loss. The pattern was repeating itself throughout the solar system as Admiral Carter's Volpack tactics slowly strangled the Alliance fleet's logistics network. Meanwhile, the alien coalition was beginning to show serious cracks under the pressure of unexpected resistance. In the Alliance command ship, representatives from 7 different species argued bitterly about how to proceed against an enemy that refused to follow established patterns of warfare, the insectoid. Klaxon delegate clicked his mandibles in obvious frustration as he addressed the War Council. "Our losses have exceeded acceptable parameters. The humans possess weapons technology we did not anticipate, and their tactical doctrine appears specifically designed to counter our standard operating procedures." Vextar's yellow eyes blazed with anger as he responded. The Klaxon fear a few primitive mammals with stolen technology. Perhaps your species lacks the resolve necessary for difficult campaigns. The insult sparked immediate protests from other Alliance members. The energy-based ethereals flickered with agitation while the crystalline shard delegates resonated with discordant harmonics that translated roughly as diplomatic outrage. "The Korathi promised swift victory," the lead ethereal pulsed in frequencies that conveyed cold disapproval. "Instead, we find ourselves trapped in an extended conflict against opponents who seem to understand our weaknesses better than we understand theirs." The arguments grew more heated as each species began to question the wisdom of continuing a war that was proving far more costly than anticipated. Some delegates quietly began discussing separate peace negotiations, while others demanded more aggressive tactics to force human surrender. Colonel Maya Thompson watched the political fracturing through intercepted Alliance communications, but her attention was focused on the ground war that was spreading to a dozen human worlds. Her defensive strategies were proving devastatingly effective as Alliance troops discovered that every human colony had been turned into a carefully prepared fortress. On the mining world of Kepler Prime, Alliance forces attempted another planetary assault only to find themselves facing quantum minefields that seemed to activate the moment enemy boots touched the ground. The mines were invisible to Alliance sensors and powerful enough to destroy their heaviest assault vehicles, Maya's ground. Commanders had spent weeks training with the new weapons, learning to use portable quantum devices that could punch through any known armor. More importantly, they had developed tactics that took advantage of the Alliance's rigid military hierarchy and dependence on centralized command structures. "Colonel, enemy forces on Kepler Prime are requesting immediate evacuation," her communications officer reported. "Their casualty reports indicate over 60% losses in the first hour of ground operations." Maya nodded with satisfaction as she reviewed the battle reports. The Alliance had expected to face primitive human soldiers using conventional weapons, but instead encountered warriors equipped with technology that seemed almost magical in its effectiveness. Captain Ben Hughes was discovering that human innovation extended far beyond new weapons as his engineers developed combat modifications that turned ordinary civilian ships into deadly surprise packages. Cargo vessels were fitted with concealed torpedo launchers, while passenger liners became mobile command centers coordinating attacks across multiple star systems. "Captain, the convoy modification program is exceeding all projections," his chief engineer reported with obvious pride. "We've converted 47 civilian ships into combat vessels, and the Alliance still hasn't figured out how to identify them among normal traffic." Ben watched as one of their converted freighters approached, an Alliance patrol group broadcasting civilian distress signals. The alien ships moved to provide assistance according to their standard protocols, completely unaware that the helpless cargo vessel was actually bristling with quantum weapons. The surprise attack destroyed 3 Alliance cruisers before they could even raise their shields, proving once again that human creativity was more than matching alien technology. Commander Jake Morrison coordinated the expanding network of hit-and-run attacks from his mobile command ship, constantly moving between hiding spots as his forces struck at enemy formations throughout human space. His tactical innovations were being copied by other human commanders, creating a web of interconnected operations that kept the Alliance fleet off balance. "Sir, intelligence reports that Alliance morale is dropping significantly," his communications officer reported. "Intercepted transmissions indicate growing dissatisfaction among member species about the conduct of this campaign." Jake studied the tactical displays showing Alliance ship positions throughout the system. The enemy fleet was still massive and dangerous, but it was no longer the confident force that had arrived weeks ago demanding instant surrender. Dr. Sam Collins worked frantically in his laboratory to stay ahead of Alliance countermeasures, developing new variants of quantum weapons as the aliens began adapting their shields and armor to human technology. His team had become humanity's secret weapon, creating innovations faster than the enemy could respond. "Doctor, the new Cascade torpedo is ready for field testing," his assistant announced. "The theoretical calculations suggest it could destabilize entire ship formations if the quantum field interactions work as predicted." Sam looked at the sleek weapon taking shape in the fabrication chamber, knowing that this device might tip the balance of the war. The cascade effect could theoretically spread from ship to ship through their own shield emissions, turning the Alliance's defensive technology against them. But even as human forces continued their successful campaign, everyone knew that Vexstar would eventually be forced to make a decisive move. The Alliance had committed too much prestige to this war to simply withdraw, and their massive fleet still possessed enough firepower to devastate human civilization. The question was no longer whether the Alliance would launch a final desperate assault, but when and where humanity would face their ultimate test. The breaking point came when Vexstar received news that 3 more Alliance member species were threatening to withdraw from the campaign. The Klaxon had already pulled 2 battle groups from the front lines after their flagship was destroyed in a human ambush, and now the Crystalline Shard delegates were demanding an immediate end to what they called an unwinnable conflict. Standing in his war room aboard the massive command ship, Vexstar made a decision that would either end the war quickly or destroy his career forever. If the humans wanted to fight like terrorists and cowards, hiding behind civilians and striking from shadows, then he would force them into the open by threatening what they valued most. "Prepare the planetary bombardment protocols," he ordered his tactical staff. "Target the human homeworld and their major colony centers. We will give them one final chance to surrender before we turn their cities to glass." The threat was broadcast across all human frequencies within hours, showing detailed targeting information for Earth's major population centers and a countdown timer that gave humanity exactly 24 hours to accept unconditional surrender. The message was clear: submit or watch billions of innocent people die in nuclear fire. Admiral Lisa Carter received the ultimatum in her command center and felt ice form in her veins as she realized The scope of Vextar's desperation, the Alliance. Commander was gambling everything on humanity's compassion, betting that no species would allow such massive civilian casualties rather than surrender. Admiral, President Helen Ross appeared on the secure communication link, her face pale but determined. The cabinet has been in emergency session for 6 hours. Some members are pushing for immediate surrender to save the civilian populations. Lisa studied the tactical displays showing Alliance dreadnoughts moving into bombardment positions around Earth and the major colonies. The alien ships carried weapons capable of cracking continents, and their targeting data showed they were serious about the threat. Madam President, surrendering now would mean the end of human independence forever, but I may have another option. Dr. Sam Collins had been working around the clock to complete his most ambitious project yet. The quantum cascade weapon that could theoretically destabilize multiple enemy ships simultaneously. The device was untested and dangerous beyond measure, but it represented humanity's best chance to break the Alliance fleet before they could carry out their threat. Doctor, how certain are you that the cascade effect will work as predicted? Admiral Carter asked over the secure link to his laboratory. Sam wiped exhaustion from his eyes as he stared at the weapon's complex control systems. Honestly, Admiral, the theoretical models suggest a 70% chance of success. But if it fails, the quantum backlash could destroy our own ships as well. The weapon worked by creating a destabilizing field that would spread through enemy shield networks, causing catastrophic failures that could theoretically take down entire battle formations. But the exotic physics involved were barely understood, and a single miscalculation could prove disastrous. Captain Amy Foster volunteered to test the prototype weapon despite the enormous risks involved. Her ship had been fitted with experimental systems that might protect her crew from the cascade effect, but no one could guarantee their safety if something went wrong. Captain, you don't have to do this, Admiral Carter told her during the final briefing. We can find another way to deploy the weapon. Amy checked her ship systems one final time as her crew prepared for the most dangerous mission in human history. Admiral, if this works, it could end the war in hours instead of months. If it fails, at least we'll know the technology needs more development. The target was an Alliance fortress station that controlled one of their major supply routes, heavily defended by over 50 warships of various classes. Intelligence indicated that destroying the station would cripple the Alliance's ability to maintain their siege of human space. Amy's ship approached the target, using the same stealth technology that had served Captain Davis so well in his reconnaissance missions. The quantum cascade weapon was hidden in what appeared to be a standard torpedo tube, its exotic signature masked by the ship's other systems. Target acquired, her weapons officer reported quietly. All enemy ships are maintaining standard defensive formations. Their shields are interconnected for maximum protection. The interconnected shields were exactly what the cascade weapon needed to spread its effect throughout the enemy formation. Amy took a deep breath and gave the order that would either save humanity or doom her entire crew. Fire the cascade torpedo. The weapon launched silently toward the Alliance station, its quantum warhead invisible to conventional sensors until the moment of activation. When it detonated against the station's shields, the initial effect seemed disappointingly small compared to the massive explosions of conventional weapons, but then the cascade began. The destabilizing field spread through the interconnected shield network like wildfire, jumping from ship to ship as quantum resonance patterns amplified the destructive effect. One by one, Alliance vessels began to suffer catastrophic system failures as their own defensive technology turned against them. The station itself simply came apart as its structural integrity failed at the molecular level. 53 Alliance warships died in the cascade as their hulls destabilized and collapsed into twisted debris. The entire engagement lasted less than 3 minutes from weapon launch to final explosion. Amy's ship survived the backlash, though her crew suffered severe radiation exposure from the exotic energies involved. The demonstration sent shockwaves through the Alliance fleet as commanders realized they faced a weapon that could destroy their largest formations in a single strike. Captain, Ben Hughes received intelligence reports about the successful test. Within hours, along with orders to prepare for Operation Silent Thunder's final phase, every available human ship would converge on the Alliance staging area where Vexstar was preparing his bombardment fleet. Captain, Admiral Carter is authorizing the use of Cascade weapons against the main Alliance fleet, his communications officer reported. All ships are to rendezvous at coordinates that will put us within striking distance of their command formation. Ben felt his pulse quicken as he realized what this meant. Humanity was about to risk everything on a single, massive engagement that would either break the Alliance siege or result in the complete destruction of Earth's defensive fleet. The countdown timer continued its relentless advance toward the moment when Alliance dreadnoughts would begin bombarding human worlds. But now humanity had a weapon that could strike back with devastating effect, and Admiral Carter was preparing to use it in the largest space battle in galactic history. President Ross appeared on communication screens throughout human space, addressing her people for what might be the last time. My fellow humans, in the next few hours our military will attempt something that has never been tried before. We go into battle not just for our own survival, but for the right of all species to choose their own destiny among the stars. The final gambit was about to begin, with the fate of human civilization hanging in the balance.